It's a beautiful morning here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to your daily dose of sunshine. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
It's like we're going to have to copyright this statement about daily dose of sunshine. It has a lovely ring to it. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Indeed, Ayo. Well, there is so much to think about and so much to look at. You know, when you look at what is happening in our country and across the world, I mean, I think Americans have a big day today. And I'm sure the world is looking with expectation as to what is going to be happening in the United States as President-elect Donald Trump, mounts the saddle today. We're a few hours ahead of them, and I think much later we'll be seeing what is happening in Washington, D.C. But we're coming back to Abuja here in the Federal Capital Territory and showing you what it's like in the Central Business District. Yes, you already had highlights of that playing up for you. The Central Business District is where you have a lot of the companies, some of them federal government companies, some of them owned by individuals, private companies. But you see right there what we're bringing to you, the 4 towers of the NNPC, 2 of them already redone and reclad in very beautiful glass cladding, and the others still in their concrete and steel cladding. So you see the 4 towers there, somewhere in that overview. And you also there are a number of towers around the Central Business District, Ayo. It depends on which direction you're looking at. So at some point, I'm sure the operator of this drone must have been wondering, do I look back, do I look forward? In the Central Business District is also where you have iconic buildings like that of the Central Bank of Nigeria. You also have that of the National Defense College, all along that stretch on the 7th Street Central Business District in the Federal Capital Territory. I can tell you though that if you thought that last week the roads were busy, they are even far busier today, because it looks like those that had extended holidays have finally come back to work. We're hoping that there'll be more than one chair here in Abuja very soon. But Ayo, this is what we have for our viewers this morning.
Well, it's interesting that you say that the Abuja Central Business District is getting busier. I'm not sure that Kayla is going to like the sound of that because of the traffic that comes with it. Anyway, some people already said that Lagos has come to Abuja because of the president that's in power right now in Aso Rock right now. But let's not take the shine away from what the objective of this early morning view is. The serenity of it, the peace that it kind of gives to you, the skyline, gives you this outlook of the city that you love. One of the things that usually gets to me, ticks me kind of about our skylines is, so right now some people are in buildings watching this program right now and seeing this skyline and wondering, hey, that's where I am. And I also ask that question, can you locate your place here? Because many times, you just know where you're going from right down there. But when you have a bird's eye view of it, can you identify where you find yourself? That's a good one. So let's see if you can identify, those of you whose skyline we're showing right now. If you can locate a landmark of where your house is, can you locate where your house is right now, where the building you're in is this moment? Let's know on X.
Well, indeed, while we wait for people to tell us if they can identify, excuse me, or even if they can identify the roads, in the Federal Capital Territory, because it's very interesting. One of the things I found out that when you come to Abuja, people do not identify roads by their names. They actually identify them perhaps by the areas that these things are located in. So you hear Area 11, Area 10, Wuse 2. And then sometimes you can get confused if you don't really know the areas very well. For those of us who did not have the privilege of entering public transport to be able to know the areas very well and had to study the place, through maps and the names of the roads, it can get a bit confusing. But this area, this central business district, interestingly, is one of those areas that doesn't really have a name per se. It has very interesting names like 7th Street, 9th Street running through it. And if you're not very conversant with that area, you can get very confused, driving through those particular areas, especially if you're following Google Maps. Well, this is where we are now, but we are going to be going all the way to Niger State, talking about how when people get confused and sometimes unsure of what to do and sometimes throw safety in the wind. These are the results that we get. Yesterday, we were greeted with very unpleasant news of how there was an explosion in Niger State. Not only was there an explosion, but it took along with it many lives. Over 80 people were lost, in that very tragic incident that happened in Niger State, a tanker explosion somewhere in the state. And it was also reported that people were trying to scoop fuel. Again and again and again, we have to ask, when will we be wise? When will we be wise? When will we value our lives above things that are very dangerous? I know that Channels Television has taken this on because it's something that really touches all of us here. And we think that there needs to be a broader enlightenment of the populace, especially those who could be susceptible to that sort of temptation, who think that, oh, maybe I'll be able to do it and get away with it. We have also embarked on some sort of awareness, to teach people, to tell them. But I think that there needs to be more, to get to the grassroots, that no amount of petrol around a falling tanker is worth your life. Even if petrol were 5,000 naira per litre, it is not worth risking your life for, to scoop so much as half a litre of that. Because when you think about the carnage that results from this sort of thing, it really is heartrending. It was just last year we had to deal with a tanker explosion in Jigawa, and over 100 people lost their lives in that particular incident. A tanker that capsized at night, or like it turned over at night, and the villagers were trying to scoop fuel, and it went up in flames. The same thing happened here again, this one at a very critical juncture between Abuja and Niger State, somewhere where that's very close to a particular waterfall, which we have always marketed, spoken about on this particular program. And yesterday, the federal government, the president, we understand, sent a delegation made up of the Minister of Information and also the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs to go and assess the level of damage. These are some of the shots you're seeing there. The firemen around there, trying to put out the flames. So they went round to the scene of the incident. By that time, a lot of the flames had already been put out, and also went to the hospitals. But the critical question, Ayo, is when will we be past this sort of avoidable incidences, which we understand in about 4 months now has claimed close to 264 lives. 264 people have died in 4 months as a result of accidents like this. How do we explain it?
One of the answers might be, Maokwe, to begin to consider, first of all, the level of awareness of our people of such incidences, and perhaps also consider options, if I can say, other options to the modes of moving fuel around. I don't recall having such ghastly accidents, such terrible, fatal accidents growing up. So hearing these things this time, it's quite telling. I can't even pretend about it. It's very, very telling. Now, the question is this the way we always moved fuel around the country before now? Now, I also know that to a large extent, the railroad infrastructure has had its challenges over time, and government after government has been making efforts to restore those. Are those options that we can look at? Now, we also know that at some point in our lives, we moved some of these things through pipelines. Is it that they cannot be moved anymore? Maybe this is just wishful thinking. And then What is it that will make people risk their lives? Are we able to anticipate this? Now, you quoted 260 something lives that have been lost in the last couple of months. According to the Minister of Information and National Orientation, he said from September to this time, we've had 4 major incidences, and he talked about the first one being between Ibadan and Ife, where a tanker exploded. 5 houses and cars and other vehicles were touched. He talked about a day after that, somewhere in the same Niger State, in Agai, about 48 persons lost their lives. Not long after that, he talked about another one still in the same Niger State, where about 144 people. He actually quoted the date, 15th of October, he said. And now, in the same Niger State, 86 people have lost their lives. Now, putting all together, he puts it at 265 people who have lost their lives so far, according to this report that I'm looking at. So, is there a value for our lives as a people? When these things happen, what do we lose? But we lose way more than our people's lives. We lose our values. We lose the conscience of the nation. The question is, are we able to anticipate such things? What is responsible for tankers crashing or whatever it is that will make people to, have to begin to, that will make fuel spill, and then people to be scooping these things? What is it that is causing it? Have we looked? Now we understand that, according to the minister, perhaps the federal government has set up a committee to look at the remote and immediate causes of this. And then what? So, I guess we can say that the buck stops at the table of the federal government, whoever is directly in charge or in control of this. We have a minister in charge of, petroleum downstream and all of that. Are these issues that can be looked at? We have directors, we have staff in the ministries that are supposed to be responsible for these things. Is it the roads that are bad? What exactly are the issues here? Are they state roads? Are they federal roads? These are very, very critical things that if we can anticipate that these things could happen because they have happened before, maybe Malcolm will be able to take take some steps to preempt these things. The question remains, can we preempt that such things would happen? What's the expertise of the drivers? What's the state of the vehicles? All kinds of questions continue to be raised, but then, who is listening really, Malpai? Who really is listening?
Well, that's a big question, Ayo, because we have to do something to see how it is that we can get past these incidences, where we can actually, put them down, make sure that the numbers come down, make sure that we do not record this sort of explosions, and even if they were to occur, because of course, as somebody has described, the tankers on the roads, they said these are moving explosives. Really, we're putting explosives on the road, and we're moving them across the country. Even if for whatever reason accidents were to occur with tankers, we should find a way to make sure that the casualty is minimized. It's not as a result of people going to go and scoop fuel. The people have the good sense to know that when you see an accident involving tankers, the thing that should be on your mind is how to run away and get away from that particular vicinity. Well, Ayo, we'll continue to keep tabs with Road Safety Commission, with the federal government agencies, with Ministry of Works and Housing, with Federal Road Maintenance Agency, FEMA, and everyone who is responsible for making sure that our roads are safe and usable for all Nigerians. Well, we'll take a break at this moment, and we'll be back to take a look at the matter for the day. Please stay with us. indeed, we have quite a number of things to look at this morning. Well, joining us on Sunrise Early this morning is Dr. Muiz Banire, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Just last week, we had members of, Amnesty International here, and also an independent senior advocate of Nigeria, talking about the accusations that the Nigerian police is high-handed in its response to the letter written or the report released by Amnesty International. Well, before we go into that particular matter, I would like to just, confirm that Dr. Banire, good morning, Dr. Banire, can you hear me?
Good morning. I can hear you clearly. Good morning.
Oh, great to have you join us. Just before we go into the issue of Amnesty International and the Nigeria police, I wanted to quickly get your thoughts on the assumption of office today of President-elect Donald Trump. I mean, of course, he is the former president, so sometimes it can be a bit confusing when you say President Donald Trump and he's about to take another oath of office today. But I wanted to get your own views, if you had any, watching what is happening in the United States and the expectations that you might have as a Nigerian watching the politics of the U.S.
Well, honestly speaking, I must say that I'm in a confused state. I don't know what to say really, what the expectation will be. But I have so much realization about things that are likely to be unfolding, particularly globally. I'm not too bothered about the local issues within the United States because, of course, they've chosen who they prefer. They have to live by it. But globally, I suspect that we might have a lot of unusual scenarios playing out at the end of the day, which might not be too comforting to all of us. That's my suspicion.
Okay, well, we'll wait and see how that eventually plays out. But let me take you to the matter at hand, which is this issue between the police and Amnesty International. A number of civil society organizations have come out to say that the police was targeting and threatening officials of Amnesty International for no just cause, because what it is that they have released in their report is no different from what other even government institutions have found out. For instance, the National Human Rights Commission has also confirmed that during the August protest last year, there were a number of people killed. Why, do you think the police has reacted in the manner that it has with Amnesty International?
Well, I've been following the event in the last, I think, almost 6 weeks or thereabout now. And I think that what has happened here, well, it's a good development in my view in the first instance, because if an agency of government or a person feels strongly about his position, that is, you are convinced of your position, there's nothing wrong in you ventilating your grievance. And I think that's what Nigeria police appears to be doing, to say that we are convinced we haven't committed what they said they have committed. So we believe that there must be some retraction or some form of redress ultimately on this. And to me, it's just something that I would do also. If, for example, you raise an allegation against me that I know I'm innocent of it, of course I will continue to insist until my case is established. And I think that the scenario playing out in this instance too.
All right, so let's look at some of the issues which the police, which Amnesty International has raised, which is about police brutality, more or less. The fact that they were involved in some of the allegations. How do you think that this should have been handled? Do you think, because the police really cannot investigate itself, it cannot be a judge in its own case, can it?
Well, certainly not. Certainly not. I will not expect that to be candid, because I know somebody raised that in one other program that I watched, and the response of the first PRO was simply that it wasn't the police that did the investigation alone, that there were a number of other independent representatives on the panel that went for the investigation, which is fair enough anyway. But I agree with you that you cannot be investigating yourself. But beyond that, I think the way to go about this thing ultimately is that I think Amnesty International needs to now operate by the rule of fair hearing. And then when this allegation or discoveries are made, it's always best to contact the affected agency to verify such information. And I think that if this at the top, probably would be somewhere else today. For example, the police has said in one of the instances where they said there was a grenade thrown at protesters in a filling station. Police has said that since the inception of Nigerian police in Nigeria, police had never used grenades because they've never even bought a single one before, much less now throwing grenade at protesters. Well, if that ultimately is true, which is verifiable as to whether police are in possession, have ever been in possession, or are still in possession of grenade, then at the end of the day, you discover that that will be a false accusation on its own. So for me, the opportunity to have been given by Amnesty, at least in letting the police respond before their final report, that would be my own approach to it, and that is the approach that I will canvass going forward.
Yeah, but they always maintain that usually before they send these reports, before these reports are published, they always invite those whom they have accused, I mean, or whose names are mentioned in this report, to take a look at it. And oftentimes the police attends their briefings. So what precisely do you think could warrant, the kind of response which the police has now put out towards these reports that have been released by Amnesty International?
But there must be a disconnect because from the police angle, they were not invited, they were not given the privilege of response to the allegations at all. And that made them to now conduct their own independent investigation through a panel of some police people and some other independent people. Well, if that is the modus operandi of Amnesty, of course that would be okay. But if not, then they will have to improve on it. But the police is insisting that they were not given the opportunity, and most of the allegations raised in the document were things that never occurred or wrongly narrated.
As a result of this, I mean, there's also been conversation around a shrinking civic space. We also had Mr. Jibril Okutekpa here on the program, SAN, who also intervened in that particular sphere, who said that it's not that it is just shrinking the civic space, that he believes that the civic space is suffocating. The letter which Amnesty International wrote in response to what the police has released, a letter more or less threatening to sue them, has been signed by not just Amnesty International, but by a number of other civil society organizations which allege that the intimidation, harassment, and threats, these are the words that they use, against Amnesty International, coming after recent reports of intimidation and harassment of SERAP, which is another CSO, and in the context of the ongoing repression of civic space and attacks against activists, human rights defenders, and journalists, demonstrates an alarming crackdown on civic space and human rights in Nigeria. You are a lawyer yourself. Is it something that is it a sentiment, or will I say, is it something you also share? I don't want to say it's a sentiment you share, because this should go beyond sentiment. This should be represented by hard facts. Is it something you also share? This particular statement, portion of the statement around the shrinking civic space in Nigeria?
Oh, to be candid, generally we agree with that assertion, generally. But however, what at times is considered to be shrinking civic space is often misconstrued. I give you an example which I've been victim, and a lot of people have been victim, the abuse of social media. The abuse of social media has resulted in a lot of maybe arrest, interrogation, and prosecution. And at times this is seen as part of the oppressive tool of the government. But it's not in all instances that I agree, because some of these assertions, allegations that are made against entities or even personalities are so damaging that if it's not taken up by just people, their own image or reputation is also threatened. So we must continuously balance these equities. So if we look at it from that perspective, then one will conclude safely that it's not so much about the government and the human rights, the civil rights people, but more or less between the abuse of social media and citizen. On that, I think that in my view too, the approach taken by the Nigerian police, honestly, I must be commended because it's a civil way to address the issue. It's not about going to arrest somebody and say we are going to arrest their reporter, we are going to prosecute him for criminal defamation or something like that. But this time around, what they have said is that if you do not retract because we believe we have not done this, we will take you to a civil court and justify our case. If everybody can just imbibe that, then the rule of law will grow. And we all need to promote it if we do not want anarchy in our hands. So for me, I believe that it's not so much about that.
Let me get you correctly. Are you saying that the civic space is shrinking or it's not shrinking? Or that it is shrinking, but it is a cause and effect sort of situation?
The latter situation is my position, that to say that it's not so much shrinking, basically because the government is directly involved. It's shrinking seemingly because some of the activities of some of our colleagues in the human rights community are not ones that are worthy of people of repute. In other words, you don't make allegations against persons, you don't make allegations against entity without having a factual basis or the evidence to substantiate that. And like I said to you, if you look at the trend, in most of these instances that they have referenced, they relate to the application of the Cyber Crimes Act as regards the abuse of social media. And in that way, we must continuously isolate instances where government is involved. For me, I share the position that government must allow the space to continuously widen, because I always see some of this, if it is a criticism of government policy, government program, it's welcome. I support it entirely, because for me, if I were to be the leaders, my position would be to regard such criticism as feedback and address it. Or where you even they perceive that the author of such misinformation is one that had come from a position of weakness, it's your responsibility to enlighten or educate such person, not necessarily to harass, intimidate, or even arrest such person. So to that extent, my position will simply be that, well, but as far as the government is concerned, the space must be allowed, but we must not allow the continuous abuse of social media. It's becoming a threat to people's life, people's reputation all over the place. Like it was said before, I must confess to you, I was one of the people that was against the strict regulation of social media under the last administration. But with time now, with the passage of time, I'm beginning to have a think that certainly we need to, as a matter of urgency, regulate the space, as opposed to the civil space vis-a-vis government and the people.
But Dr. Banire, isn't that a result of government not giving the people enough information or communicating with the citizens significantly? Because if people have all the information that they need at any given point in time, there will be little need, if any at all, for speculations and for falsehood to spread. So if people do not know what's going on, isn't it normal for people to just fill in the blank spaces when they know that government should give them information or communicate with the people, engage with the feedback of the people, and they don't?
Well, I completely agree with you that government owes that duty. I completely agree that they must give duty, they must supply information. Even beyond that, like I said, even if, for example, a citizen misconstrues government policy or government program and says something that does not accord with the government position, I do not even believe the government should harass or intimidate such a citizen. Such a citizen must be educated. That's all. You owe him a duty. It means that it's coming from a position of ignorance, and it's your duty to educate or enlighten him. To say, no, this is not the situation. This is the situation. I give you a very good example. Recently, I read on the social media and all over the place that there was a collapse of the national grid again, and the former presidential candidate of Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, made some comments adverse to the incumbent position. But I think second or third day thereafter, he realized that the information given was not really correct as per the collapse, but it was a trip-off. And he apologized and corrected himself. That is how it should be. When citizens have information, like you rightly said, they are not likely to start peddling rumor all over the whole place. But when there is a gap or lacuna, that is when they start, of course, like you rightly said, filling the gap on their own, which could be injurious to the government itself or to the leaders.
Now, take that to the police conversation we're having, the meat of the matter we're talking about. Perception is reality, Dr. Banire, and over time, people have a position on the police, and I'm not sure how persuaded people are that there has been any significant difference in time past. So there is more likelihood, you may argue it, that people will believe more what the Amnesty International has said as opposed to the response of the police. How will that be managed? Or how should that be managed?
Well, let me start from the fact that perception is not usually reality in all instances. In fact, in a lot of instances, it discovered that perception is far from reality. So that's number one. Secondly, of course, the Nigerian police certainly have credibility problem, no doubt. And I'm sure that's why they are struggling to get out of that credibility issue. One of the ways of course, they can go about is that if truly they are convinced of their position, let them continue to ventilate it. Maybe at the end of the day, the Amnesty International, through their own investigative machinery, can also justify their position, or if otherwise, of course, the parties can go to court and ventilate their different positions. But most importantly, I believe that some of these things at times are not product of diligent investigation. I read in the Vanguard, most of the information contained in that report. In fact, I forgot the date of the Vanguard. I already read it in the Vanguard before even Amnesty came up with that report. Virtually on all fours with that. So in such a study, there is this tendency in me particularly to say, oh, maybe they just did cut and paste from Vanguard newspaper without actually investigating properly. But be that as it may, the situation is that if the police now insist that, look, we are sure of our position, do conduct further investigation or review yourself or retract your position, and they are convinced, and Amnesty also equally feel the same way. Of course, let them go and resolve it in the proper forum, which is the court. I'm sure that with time, I'm sure the police is struggling to get out of that reputation that they have had over time, and I think that is what is going on now.
Well, Dr. Banire, some people will still argue with you that as far as they are concerned, the police hasn't changed. So if they perceive that the police hasn't changed, then the police has to prove to them that they haven't changed with hard facts. Now, talking about security, a strategy, over time, I think since 2019, there was this security strategy developed by the Office of the NSA at the time, saying that the focus of our security now is on the people and not just on the state. And of course, when we talk about security within Nigeria, the police is supposedly playing the lead role. Now, again, it speaks to the issues raised by Amnesty International. If we look at it generally, it's just saying that the police should do better and the federal government should do more. What are the gaps that you would suggest that the police should fill as quickly as possible so that we can change the perception that people have about them, reality or not?
To be candid, it will take a long time for the police to change the perception in the people for so many reasons. But let me start from your observation initially about the current position of the police vis-a-vis protest. Well, I'm sure I can say without fear of contradiction that they have improved largely. I'm sure you saw what happened in Lagos State here the last time, and not the last time. I think in the previous 2 or 3 protests, that police were more or less people escorting the protesters all over the whole place. And that's how it should be. Because the police have a very, very delicate responsibility when there are protests in town. One, they need to protect the protesters on one hand. They must also protect innocent citizens. In some of the situations, you find out that third party will hijack such protests to the detriment of innocent citizens. And the right I have to, for example, engage in protest is the same right that you have to say, I'm not going to be part of a protest. Both parties must be protected, and there is a need for balancing. That's on one hand. On the other hand is the reality that, look, if, for example, the police is expected to use the minimum force in maintaining law and order in such situation, and you find a situation where maybe the life of innocent citizens or the life of even the officers of the police are threatened with substantial force from some hoodlums that have hijacked such peaceful or innocent protests, then there must be reciprocity in such instance. In other words, the police too must react appropriately. Otherwise, it will consume not only innocent citizens, it will equally consume even men of the Nigerian police. For example, you notice during the last MPAC governance protest, when the APC armored carrier was hijacked for I think almost 2 days, and was being driven all over the whole place, and seemingly the police were helpless. I'm sure that if they had not been warned and they haven't moved, as we used to know them when we were in school, they would have, of course, shot so many people before we know it. So for me, I believe that certainly they have an Herculean task in their hand. They have to continuously engage the citizen and also punish appropriately their officers where they go beyond bound, and let the people know and create machinery through which the citizens themselves can say, yes, I complained, and they responded to my complaint objectively. And I think this is the way to go. But for now, of course, there will remain suspicion on the part of the police, on the part of the people against the police. On the part of the government needs to throw more funding into the Nigerian police because they have a lot to do. For example, I expect them to have more of rubber bullets or canisters at worst during protests, not even live bullets. They must not carry live bullets at all anywhere, as much as possible, except absolutely necessary. If it must be carried, it must be negligible, maybe 2 or 3 officers among in dozens of them in a particular. This is the way to go. Except they have all this equipment, then they are unable to perform their role credibly in a way that we expect them to do without injuring the confidence of the people in the Nigerian police. I think that.
So, Dr. May I ask you, how do you then see this conflict getting resolved? This conflict between the police and Amnesty International. Do you think the police should invite them to a round table and withdraw the case? Because this letter signed by over 40 CSOs is quite telling, isn't it?
Well, there are so many ways to skin a cat. One of the ways is the one you have proposed. Of course, they can sit down with them, engage them, put forth their own evidence, and the Amnesty International can come forth and put down forth their own evidence. And of course, if the police still feel strongly outside such conversation, the appropriate place is for those parties to interrogate it before an arbiter who will look at it independently and apportion blame appropriately. It's not, because we have to be a bit careful in the way and manner that we encourage some undermining of the government itself, because at the end of the day, the consequence will be that we will be in a state of anarchy. Some people that lost their investment or their life during the various protests as a result of the activities of the hoodlum today certainly will be on the side of the police, or in fact, we even condemn the police for not doing enough. That's the irony of it. So it requires some sort of balance. So I believe that they can continue to engage them, or Amnesty International can engage the Nigerian police, whichever way, the conversation must continue. But if any party that feels offended can ultimately, of course, approach as they are taking they can take a legal redress. Any of the parties can take legal redress. That is it.
Well, we have to thank you for your time. Excuse me, we had time with us this morning on Sunrise Daily. Thank you so much, Dr. Muiz Banire. We certainly will look for how this matter is eventually resolved, but thank you so much for speaking with us. Dr. Muiz Banire is the Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
Welcome.
We'll take a break at this point and we'll be back shortly. Please stay tuned. Yes, Yes, indeed. You can see right there, we're being joined by Mr. Daniel Bwala, who is a special advisor on public communications and media. It was sometime last year, precisely in November, when the president was invited to the G20 summit in Brazil, and he went there with plenty of flourish. He was welcomed to the Brics summit holding, to the G20 summit, but much later, there was also the Brics summit, which he was also invited to. A few days ago, on the 17th of January, on Friday, the announcement came that Nigeria has now been made a partner country of the Brics. And a number of people wonder, what does that mean? A partner country is not exactly a member, but I think you're here now to enlighten us on what exactly this is for the country.
Yeah, a partner member, first of all, thank you for having me. A partner member means that the country can freely participate in areas of interest with the Brics. And the areas of interest are promoting trade and investment, looking at food security, because it's part of what the climate change focused on. The climate change conference focused on food security. So food security, infrastructural development, trade and investment, they're all parts of this collaboration, engagement, and partnership that the global community tend to promote depending on the bloc that you belong to. So in this case, the Brics, which is of course an alternative to the mainstream traditional Western bloc, aim at promoting this element that I talked about, welcome the idea of Nigeria becoming a partner. Actually, Nigeria accepted because it invited Nigeria to be a part of it. So, and I like that because as a country, before you join fully, you have to take a step, one step at a time, to appraise and also understand fully whether or not when you become a member of that bloc, you are not jeopardizing your other interests with the Western community, because part of those challenges where you have to diversify engagement so that your total commitment to one bloc does not, shut you out from the benefit you are likely to enjoy from the other bloc. So partnership is collaboration in the areas of interest of the bloc, which is, for example, I talked about trade and investment, food security, climate change, agriculture, and other issues.
So what are some of the benefits that Nigeria is hoping that will accrue to it as a result of being made a partner?
So if you're a partner, for example, you have a right not just to participate in participate in relationships. So for example, before being a partner, as a country, part of your foreign policy objective is you might want to relate with a member of the Brics on the basis of bilateral relationship. Being a partner means you have been given the access and opportunity to also participate in multilateral, engagement and relationship with the members of the Brics. So the benefits are, for example, in trade and investment. If you see some of the members of the country, you look at China, you look at Russia. Russia in agriculture will benefited a lot from them. China, of course, in infrastructure, in technology, even in agro issues, we're benefited or we're enjoying that kind of relationship. And then you look at Brazil. Brazil too is part of it. South Africa, quite a number of countries. Nigeria is not the only country that is a partner. I think we have about 7 or 8 partners. But basically the benefit is promoting multilateral and bilateral relationship with these member states in the areas of interest where there will be shared benefit. Because one thing about most countries and foreign policy objective of the country is that they look at national interests and shared prosperity. So if you're benefiting more than the other person, the people are likely to appraise the relationship so that it doesn't become a one-sided relationship where you benefit from us, but we don't benefit from you. You see area of exchange. For example, exportation and importation. We have to look at it from the point of view that both countries are enjoying that. And of course, Nigeria is seeking to grow from being a consumption country to a production country. So Nigeria seeks to promote domestic production. Nigeria seeks to export this product out of the country. Nigerian people as a people are entrepreneurial in their spirit. You have sports, entertainment, and all of that. So all of it is seeking to enhance that relationship so that both countries will enjoy and grow and meet the desired objective.
Well, I know Ayo has questions for you.
Thank you, Malcolm. One of the things that gets to me about this that I'd like you to speak to, Mr. Bwala, is that as a partner country, Nigeria is not likely to have voting rights or significant decision-making power within Brics. Can you confirm that, and how does Nigeria navigate that?
Of course, for you to be able to have a voting right, you have to be a full member. It's just like in corporate governance. You have to be a member of that company. You have to be a shareholder before you have a voting right. Now, but what are the decisions that Brics is likely to make as a bloc that will jeopardize the interests of Nigeria? Remember, Brics is nascent in the sense that it hasn't existed long enough to challenge some of the mainstream, like the traditional Western community. So there are no decisions at the moment that the Brics as a bloc will make that Nigeria will be jeopardized because of its lack of being a member. But partnership is one of the processes where, for example, we talked about collaboration. If a decision is to be made in a specific area that Nigeria thinks it will not be of interest to it, as a partner, you have a right to engage with the member states before they will arrive at that point where they will make a decision. So because Brics is also interested in the partner members and also wishes that these partner members will join as members, I do not think that Brics as a bloc will take any decision that will jeopardize the interests of these countries. And in deciding on any issue of interest to the bloc, they will take into cognizance the opinion of the partners. That's the whole idea. It is like telling somebody before you come and join our club, come and attend one of our dinners and see what it feels like to be a part of this club. You come to the dinner, it is the objective of the team or the group to ensure that you are given a very warm reception. It is also the objective to ensure that you are treated very, very well so that you will feel the need to be a part of it. And there is nothing that the group will want to do that will jeopardize your interest if their interest is to get you to be a part of it. And no nation will be invited to be a part of the bloc if that nation is not going to add value to it.
And there are so many other issues to raise with you, Mr. Bwala, but let's quickly segue to the president's trip to Abu Dhabi concerning the Sustainability Week. And of course, the president has also made an offer to that country's leader to come here. But it would seem like, maybe I should ask you, what are the low-hanging fruits from that Sustainability Week that the president attended in Abu Dhabi that couldn't have been achieved without that trip?
Wow, it is massive. Massive in the sense that, you just think of it, what would be the benefit of what someone will get by being present in a meeting and being absent? If you're absent in a meeting, decision may be taken without your knowledge. If you're absent in a meeting, probably credence will not be put regarding your interests. But if you are there, you are able to not only participate in the activities, but to make your position known. Remember that the president presented a historic epoch-making speech at the Sustainability Week, where he emphasized the commitment of Nigeria as a nation to climate change and climate sustainability. He talked about, for example, climate resilience. He talked about energy transition, and then he talked about sustainable development. He talked about the effort that Nigeria is making at the moment in achieving this objective. Because if you remember the G20 meeting that was held, part of what they emphasized at the meeting and concluded was what they call global governance reform. And the global governance reform revolved around poverty, hunger, that's dealing with poverty and hunger, and also the climate change. Nigeria is already doing robustly well in the area of agriculture dealing with hunger. In the area of the climate change is a commitment. There are nations who are sufficiently balanced to go into it, and there are nations that are taking one step at a time. For example, in Nigeria, we have introduced the CNG initiative, and we are hoping that that will translate to electricity, alternative energy platform. You need to understand, I forgot the name, Mr. Makinde, that this concept of climate change requires robust investment. It's an expensive endeavor, especially on the part of developing countries. The developed countries would have had their industrial revolution. So all the burning of the greenhouse gases are taking place substantially, and they have come to a point where they have sufficient infrastructure to try to migrate to energy alternative. But the countries that are developing still have lots of challenges. For example, in the area of infrastructure, you have challenges in the area of technology as well, and in the area of agriculture. So we need investment, we need support system. The rest of the world who have attained certain advantageous level are also making the commitment to be a part of it. You see the challenge even in America. Biden administration wholly committed to climate change. Trump looks at climate change with doubt, and then they are likely to have a setback as a country by the time he becomes president because of the quote-unquote what they call conspiracy theory about climate change that he believes. And then you go to other countries of the world like the United Kingdom too, they are making serious effort to migrate. Africa and Nigeria is taking also playing its role. Also, President Bola Tinubu actually lay again the commitment of Nigeria and what we have already begun towards achieving this sustainability and climate alternative.
You know, there's someone who will say to you, Mr. Bola, all that is exceptional talk, very good talk. And you've talked about the gaps that we need to fill, infrastructure and all of that. But there is a critical one that we're struggling with, and that is the awareness of the people, education of the people. And these things happen at the states. One wonders whether how the president intends to follow up with these issues without significantly engaging productively and sustainably engaging the state governments to ensure that the needful is done, because at the end of the day, the president can't take the shovel and hoe himself. He has to engage with the states to do this. So what's the plan to ensure that the promises he made at Abu Dhabi cascade down to the states through significant sustained engagements?
Right. Actually, generally in life, before you can do anything, you have to talk it. It is when you talk it, then you will back it up with action. I'm sure that those who have been observing the conduct of Mr. President and his demeanor towards his relationship with the governors will certainly agree with us that the president is one who believes in teamwork rather than one-man squad. And I can give you an example of the president's commitment to collaborate with governors. We had a judgment that authorized local government autonomy, but he didn't rush to implement it. He still engaged the state governors so we can have an understanding of how to effectively implement the judgment of the Supreme Court, which is also backed up by what the president plan was. And that has been achieved. And then we are going to see in the coming week the release of these funds directly to the local government. That's the idea of the president engaging with governors. You must have also noticed or observed over time that so many occasions the governors had demand for some money. The president will have the money released to them despite the fact that they have increased allocation. The president's ears have always been open also to the governors on areas that the federal government will collaborate with them in delivering governance. Now, when you deliver governance, I believe you are still fulfilling part of the sustainability, because we're looking at development that will last. We are looking at what will last, not just for us, like he said in the speech, but for time after us. And the president is poised on that. He has been having a series of meetings with the governor, which you know. Even, for example, the tax reform, which is part of the initiative, the president has also been engaging with the governor. There is no evidence to show that there is any lack of communication, engagement, collaboration, or effort on the part of the president to carry the governors along in fulfilling that. Remember, almost all of these trips that he travels to, he traveled with the governors. And these governors have been so good that in almost all of the trips that they travel with him, they also explore opportunities to get investors and explore opportunities to also take advantage of what is on the table so they can bring it and break it down to their state, which is what you are seeing in some states of the Federation.
So do you think then that, this sort of conversation which the conservative leader of the UK party, the leader of the Conservative Party in the UK, Ms. Kemi Badenoch, has been making, do you think it will have any effect whatsoever on the potential investors that have been trying to bring in?
Well, in the case of Kemi Badenoch, at this level, she is a leader of the opposition. She's not like the leader of the government in power. The government in power is the one that shaped the policy. The opposition markets their policy, and they are hoping to come back because they just lost the government. I do not think that the rhetoric, first of all, we definitely celebrate Kemi being a Nigerian woman if you have lived long enough in Nigeria to see the challenges that women face, and then you see a woman breaking through not just in Nigeria but outside of Nigeria, you can but celebrate her. And that to us is massive achievement to have a woman like her, smart, intelligent, and not just thriving in the UK, potentially likely to be the Prime Minister of England if the party probably wins. The only problem we have with Kemi, I think, is the rhetoric. because Kemi belonged to the right base in the United Kingdom, which is what you see in this populism around the world, that you can deepen on your support system if you can feed off of the anger of the people. And so she's building a rhetoric of denigrating Nigeria, demarcating Nigeria, so she can probably win the acceptance or acceptation of the right in her party. And that to me is counterproductive, because if you look at Rishi Sunak, he is also from Indian origin. There has been this issue of gang rape in India. He has never used that as a weapon to promote what he believed to be a departure from what is likely to be believed as hereditary or history of the Indian people. But she has always denigrated Nigeria. She grew up to a part in Nigeria. She went to school. So there's a part of her that is a product of Nigeria, apart from the fact that she was born to Nigerian parents. And then secondly, Nigeria is not the problem of the United Kingdom. Recently, there was a report about gang rape in the UK that spanned, I think, over close to 20 years, where the police were held culpable by not reporting because they thought that if they did that, it was going to be considered as profiling. Do you know she has not talked about that? There are knife crime every time in the United Kingdom. You can count a number of things enough to demarcate the United Kingdom if you wanted to.
Yeah, but you think that all of these statements then will have no effect on, the marketing efforts we're making in Nigeria?
I don't think that it will have effect. One, because she's not the government in power. Usually, this international diplomacy, collaboration, or relationship is a dealing between government to government. Now, because she's not the government in power, it will not have that effect. But secondly, because she's a Nigerian, investors will also, they're smart enough to assess what you say, whether it is born out of rhetoric or it is born out of genuine, belief that the Nigeria is not in place for a destination for investment. So it will not have effect whatsoever. I only wish that she would redirect her, because that path she's trading, she may not sustain her as a leader of the Conservative.
Well, Mr. Daniel Bola, we have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. He is a special advisor on public communications and media to the president. At this point, we're going to be talking proper business now with Laddie Williams as he comes on to talk about Business Morning on Sunrise Daily.
And it's 10 a.m. right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Good morning, good evening, wherever the world you might be watching from. It's our Business Morning right here from Channels HQ. Let's get to the top stories that set your agenda now. Starting with the FX market, we see the NAFEX rate closed at 1,561 naira 71 kobo to the dollar, reflecting a 1 naira 51 kobo depreciation from the previous day's level and in the early session. We saw the central bank there did, the central bank was quite proactive in the market, pushing trades to close below the 1,550 naira mark. Looking ahead, analysts are expecting, they're anticipating CBN will continue to maintain its active presence in the market through the coming week. So that's the picture there for the trade on Friday, mostly unchanged, at this point. Let's get a check on the global oil market now. See, oil prices are down today as expectations of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's relaxing curbs on Russia's energy sector in exchange for a deal to end the Ukraine war, that offset concern of supply disruption from, harsher sanctions there. So it's at $80.36 a barrel, losing most of the gains we saw in the previous week, 0.50%, down 0.5%. US grade, that's WTI, that's below $80. Now, 0.23%, $77.70 a barrel. The more active U.S. contract there, all eyes on that one. That's U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude. We know that's the one that the Dangote refinery likes to import. The front month contracts, which expires tomorrow, was unchanged at about $77.88 a barrel after settling down 1.02% on Friday. Meanwhile, the Dangote Petroleum Refinery says that the recent adjustment in ex-depot price of premium motor spirit is directly related to the significant increase in global crude oil prices. Hopefully, let's see if those prices continue coming down. The company, however, states its commitment to guaranteed quality to customers, even after a 5% adjustment to ex-depot price from 899 naira 50 kobo to 950 naira per liter. Dangote partners, which include Adova, Hayden, and the MRS Holdings, are expected to dispense petrol to Nigerians at a retail price of about 970 naira per liter nationwide. So we're seeing the impact there from the oil prices rising, but now we're seeing pressure. So hopefully those prices don't have to go up for too long. All right, so it's the 55th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. That begins in Davos, Switzerland, with the theme Collaboration for the Intelligent Age. And the program will be oriented around 5 distinct but highly interconnected thematic priorities, which are rebuilding trust, reimagining growth, investing in people, safeguarding the planet and industries in the intelligent age. The annual meeting is expected to convene close to 3,000 leaders from over 130 countries, 350 governmental leaders, including Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima, 60 heads of states and governments from all key regions. The meeting is to address pressing challenges and shape emerging opportunities, as well as geo-economic fragmentation, geopolitical polarization, and divisions over values that continues to impact countries and communities across the world. And the World Bank has projected that Nigeria's economy will grow by 3.5% in 2025 and improve slightly to 3.7% in 2026, driven by increased services sector activity, gradual improvements in macroeconomic stability. In its latest Global Economic Prospects report, the forecast suggests a steady but modest recovery for the country amidst ongoing domestic and global challenges. According to the International Finance Institution, the projected growth for 2025 and 2026 reflects an expected rebound in consumption, supported by gradually declining inflation following monetary policy tightening by the Central Bank of Nigeria in 2024. Meanwhile, the services sector is anticipated to remain the main driver of growth, while oil production is expected to increase modestly but remain below the country's OPEC quota. The World Bank noted that macroeconomic and fiscal reforms implemented in 2024 have helped to improve business confidence. Well, days after the announcement that the Federal High Court sitting in Ikoyi, Lagos State, has fixed January 20th for the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to arraign the chairman of Honeywell Group, Chief Obal Otudeko, and the former First Bank Managing Director, Stephen Onosaya, for allegedly defrauding the bank of 12.3 billion naira. Well, Dr. Bisi Onosaya has dismissed allegations suggesting his involvement in the controversy carried out 12 years ago at First Bank. In a statement released to the press over the weekend, Dr. Onosaya spoke through his communication advisor, Mr. Michael Oshinuyi, described the claims as baseless and an attempt to tarnish the stellar reputation of the renowned retired banker and chartered accountant. Well, we're still following that story at this point to see how it all plays out. But definitely, it's all about inauguration today. And as Donald Trump is set to begin the second term as president of the United States, many are wondering what this means for Nigeria's economy and trade relations. Well, joining us to discuss this, we have Mrs. Margaret Olele. She's the CEO, Executive Secretary, American Business Council, Nigeria. She's an expert in international trade and economics. We're discussing the potential implications of Trump's presidency on Nigeria's economy. Good morning. I guess it's safe to say happy Inauguration Day.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that too.
So it's great to have you. So what are your thoughts on how Trump's America First policy, how do you see that impacting Nigeria's economy, particularly in terms of trade and investment?
Well, first of all, I would say thank you so much, Ladi, again. It's about 2:40 here. But I'll just say that this is not completely alien to us. This is what we call the 2.0 of President Trump's administration. So it's not completely alien to us. And I would also say, because I am a typically half-full person, that it may even be beneficial in a sense, because the first coming of President Trump, we saw the institution of, or at least the formation of what they call the Prosper Africa, and that through that we have seen the closing of of about 860 deals. We have seen, transactions of about 86 billion in terms of trade and investments, and impacting positively about 49 countries. But having said that, I know that, there have been great concerns about the new administration and what it portends in terms of having a transactional attitude towards African countries, including Nigeria, and that we're probably going to be seeing things about focus on key economic priorities as opposed to things around protecting democracy in countries, and even looking at things like grants. So these are some of the things we have seen, and when we look at one of the things that are critically at stake. The AGOA, for instance, that is the African Growth and Opportunity Act that was enacted in 2000. We know that this has been helping to facilitate trade between the two countries, Nigeria and the US, and we have also. We understand that about 90% of exports under AGOA from Nigeria are in the oil and gas area, which coincidentally ties to typically what we do in terms of the revenues we generate. So we're looking at a situation where, assuming this act is not re-certified in a sense in 2025, because it's going to expire in 2025, that could itself portend some level of issues or problem. Of course, there's also the issue about trade deficits and America First, where the president now, I would say, has said that countries that have trade deficits with the US may have issues with the US, let's put it that way. So on one hand, I see opportunities, but it is, like we say, a wait and see.
All right, so, talking about AGOA, we've had, different discussions about that trade deal, and, some believe, Nigeria is still not taking full advantage, of that trade pact. But have you seen some kind of improvement, when you look at export, from Nigeria through AGOA?
Well, we're hoping if eventually this takes off, and we're hoping to see more involvement in other non-oil sectors like the agricultural sector. We've seen a bit of an upsurge, but I think Nigeria needs to do a bit more, in that area as well. But also, we know that there are interesting areas of I would say trade, but at least in terms of relationships and economic ties, there's been interest in the area of both the startup space and obviously the creative area as well. So yes, we will see some upsurge, and I think that is something that we're quite hopeful about.
We've seen that the US dollar, we've seen that monster rally, from the last quarter of 2024 into January 2025, with the DXY, reaching about 110 points against, other currencies. So how do you think the strengthening of the US dollar, how do you see that impacting the Naira, and Nigeria's trade balance?
Well, I kind of think that, the strengthening of the dollar can exert some level of pressure on the Nigerian currency, potentially leading to some level of depreciation of the Naira, and making goods obviously more expensive and, widening Nigeria's trade deficit. But conversely, I'm sure you know that a weaker Naira might also enhance, the competitiveness of Nigerian exports, offering us an opportunity to improve our trade balance if export capacity is obviously bolstered, because we know that one of the issues we have is that we're not exporting enough. If we also look at the issue around the strengthening of the Naira, as it would impact our other trade partners, if the dollars, then it perhaps could help us having more, because we do most of our transactions with the dollar currency. Then it means that the other trade partners that we have will probably have less in terms of the strength, and then that means that we are able to do a lot more, buying, because we do most of our transactions in dollars. So in the same vein, it means that whatever we are going to be importing from those countries would also come to us at a lower cost. So it's a two-sided coin type of thing in terms of the opportunities that we would get, with the strengthening of the dollar.
Talking about the dollar, we know some blocs are trying to move away from settling trade in U.S. dollar. They're looking at exploring other currencies. And just recently, we saw Nigeria got admitted as a member country, to Brics. So this admission, we're not full member at this point, but is this bad or good for Nigeria?
First of all, I would say that a country has to do what the country has to do. Over a period of time, we have seen Nigeria, courting actively other partners, from a key power country in Asia to Saudi Arabia to France, and moving with the momentum of the private sector into those conversations. So it's not surprising that Nigeria has become a partner, with the BRICS. Obviously, I know that the U.S. President Trump has also said that he would perhaps, I don't want to use the word punish, but countries that decide that they are not going to be working or using the dollar, for their transaction, and then obviously the currency that the BRICS bloc is advocating for, separate from the dollar, to use as a currency for transaction. That may cause a strain, but we also have to realize that within this bloc are potential partners or current partners of the US. So again, this is an interesting time. So it's going to be like a wait and see. It's one thing to look at this and say it is good for Nigeria. It's another thing to look at it in terms of how it may impact on the relationships that the relationship between the two countries. But at the end of the day, it's about business.
It's about business. I guess some countries need to start finding out how to navigate some of those potential tariffs, that might be slammed on them. And, there should be some kind of opportunity. There's also been talk about challenges, arising from Trump's potential trade war, with countries like China. How do you think Nigeria should position for this so we don't become the grass, when two elephants are fighting?
Well, so when two elephants are fighting, at least the lower animals, and I'm not saying Nigeria is, but the more feral animals, let's put it that way, will probably have some respite, which means that there will be an opportunity to maybe an opportunity to leverage the potential strain in those relationships to get stronger negotiations in terms of the transactions that would happen either between the US and China. I think more importantly is the fact that we have a number of US companies in Nigeria and even I would say in sub-Saharan Africa. So that are private sector US companies. So these companies may, the US government may also want to protect, as part of the American First policy, US assets in these countries against the incursion of the Chinese aggression, in terms of business. So that could portend a good thing in terms of the opportunities of having the weight of the U.S. government, support the work of the U.S. private sector in sub-Saharan Africa, including Nigeria.
How do you think Nigeria should position to make sure that somehow we profit, from a Trump presidency going forward?
So I lost you there. You went a bit.
Yeah, so I'm asking, how do you think Nigeria should position, so that as a country we profit from a Trump presidency?
it's still going to be faint. But
profiting from a Trump presidency as a country.
Okay, profit from the Trump. Yeah. So thank you very much. Yeah, I got it clearly there. Yeah. In terms of profiting from the presidency would be us coming to a table in a way that makes sense. We're coming there as people who have something to offer. A country that has something to offer, not a country that is coming, to beg for trade and aid. A country that would, have things that the U.S. would need. Let's take an example: the interest in extractive minerals, and the interest of the U.S. Government in this incoming government around nuclear energy, as an example, to drive the data centers that would enhance the AI technology. We do have a couple of the kinds of extractive minerals that may be needed, like uranium, as an example. We may not be seen as one of the top 20 countries, but at least we do have that. So being able to work in terms of what the U.S. needs, because that's what the U.S. is going to be going for, what they need, and being able to be that person, or the country that would offer what they need. Because at the end of the day, like I said, it's about business.
It's all about business. All right, thank you so much. It was great having your perspective. That was Ms. Margaret Olele, she's CEO, Executive Secretary, American Business Council, Nigeria. Thank you so much as we count down to the inauguration.
Yeah, it's thank you so much for this, laddie.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll see what it portends for some Nigerian stocks and some sectors in the stock market. That's our next conversation. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Well, Nigeria's stock market closed last week down almost 3%, with a big drop. We saw with Dangote Cement. If we could put that up there, we see it was a big drop for the week. If you're talking about Dangote Cement, we saw that drop of over 16%. That's for the share price, 16.46%. 400 now, that was the closing price there, down for the week to date, 16.46%. Well, we're discussing this now and other matters in Nigeria's stock market. We have Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed. Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed is CEO, Finance with Mukhtar. Hello, Mr. Mohammed, good morning.
Good morning, laddie. Good morning.
Yeah, so it was a big drop last week. Is it just good old profit taking, also with Dangote Cement, or something deeper?
That is profit taking. I don't think anything is there. I think it's just profit taking. No big news have come from Dangote thus far, so no major news that is trying to destock the stock. I think it's profit taking. Ordinarily, by now we're supposed to be having a close period for Dangote, so that they find the year result will be coming out. We've not gotten that. I think it's just profit taking, nothing much, and a lot of investors are moving from that equity also, because some of them are also made a lot there and trying to look at other stocks that they know what to expect from them in the coming days.
Right, and I'm talking about taking position, in other stocks. I know there were a couple of laggards in 2024, stocks that had negative performance. Do you think the strategy for this year should be to, try to pick from some of those laggards in 2024 and see if they could perform in 2025? How are you seeing that?
Yes, I think some of them will definitely perform, and we have seen some of them performing already. MTN is one of them that are giving investors about 20% return within the first 2 weeks of the year. You know why that happened, because of the expectant hike in tariff. So we've seen that in MTN. We expect that to also follow in other companies that were largely affected because of the FX policy. The company like Nigerian Brew, we expect them to perform well this year. Remember, they have also done their right issue. so they don't have negative shareholders form like what they used to have before. So we expect other companies that have suffered from these FX losses to recover this year. That will be due to one recovery in terms of FX stability, which we expect to stable between 1,400 and, well, if going by the government, maybe 1,400. But when you go by trading today in the street, it's about 1,600, and that has been what have become the stability now. So compared to when these companies were seeing it at 1,700, 1,800, I've been at the time sometimes 1,900. So that will help boost their bottom line. So those are the companies that we should look at. Most companies that suffered from the FS crisis, there will be a gradual recovery this year.
Right, and it's countdown to Inauguration Day in the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump will take on the role as president. So how are you experts looking at this? What sectors are you seeing, profiting from a Trump presidency, America First policy, and which sectors you think might actually suffer from this?
If we go by the first tenure of Donald Trump, then we'll say that the financial sector will be the largest beneficiary, because during Trump time we have investment and trade was high compared to Biden 4 years administration. So there we'll begin to look at the equity market. We begin to look at foreign direct investment. Then when you look at equities, then you have to look at the financial sector. When these funds are coming, they have to pass through the financial sector. So they will be the one that will benefit. And remember again, this expansion that the financial sector already expanded to the United States and other economic in the world. So definitely they will be the ones to benefit from a Donald Trump presidency. I think if you look at the equity market, they will be the one to benefit from a Donald Trump presidency because of trade and investment, which was if we had a security company listed in the exchange, that also would have benefited. Remember, Donald Trump was the only president that accepted to sell fighter jet to Nigeria, where we're battling terrorism. So definitely, if we had a security company listed, they also would have benefited from a Trump presidency. Maybe the oil and gas sector might be the one that will suffer more from the Trump presidency. Because
right.
You and I know that.
I guess it's all about drill, baby, drill.
Yeah. Trump favored low oil prices. He has threatened to make sure America open up their reserve and also do more exploitation of crude oil. So those might be the ones that will suffer, and that also might affect investment in those sectors, especially some of these the multinationals that are listed in our American companies that are still in Nigeria. But that could also create an avenue for other Nigerian companies to buy those assets, like what we have been seeing. In terms of all the people that will definitely also the real estate sector might also suffer during Trump administration, because most of the high player in the real estate sectors are those that buy some of these highbrow buildings, are those that are in the United States of America. So they send in money, remittance home. That might reduce the cost of the deportation. What do I call it? The deportation trade by Donald Trump. So we might not get so much Nigerian doing remittance home to buy some of these real estate houses that are being built everywhere. So that those sectors might suffer, and you have some of those firms listed in the exchange. So by and large, I think we'll have two sectors will suffer. The oil and gas will suffer. The real estate sector might suffer during the Trump presidency. But one sector that will definitely benefit during the presidency, going an antecedent of his last tenure, might be the financial sector, because trade and investment, volume in trade and investment is expected to go high during the Trump administration. When it comes to Republicans, when they come to power, you know what to expect. You expect trade, you have trade investment. When it comes to diverse, then on that sector that might suffer will be the health sector also. Remember, Trump is not in favor of some of this family planning and all that stuff. So that sector also will suffer. And then we know that some Nigerian companies, are listed in the exchange. So the health sector, the real estate sector, and the oil and gas sector. But I keep saying one sector that will really benefit from a Trump presidency will be the financial sector.
Right, and we'll definitely be watching out for those, vaccine stocks that are listed in the U.S. I know experts are expecting those ones might actually suffer too, and also the policies there, how that is going to impact global inflation. I'm wondering, is that more headache for the CBN Monetary Policy Committee here in Nigeria?
Again, Trump favor a low interest rate in America. We're already seeing that. So that, like I said again, CBN largely want to make sure that we get a stable exchange rate by remittance from the diaspora. That might be a challenge now because we don't know who and who will be affected in the deportation. Remittance might go down based on this. And remember again, the CBN is trying to launch a diaspora fund. That could only be the game changer because again that might attract a lot of investment because that will be done right from we're going to the United States to do that. So that will be only the game changer. A Trump presidency in terms of monetary policy might be negative if we are not able to attract inflow, especially in terms of remittance. We will expect a slowdown in that area. So that will affect us and to stabilize our exchange rate.
Yeah, definitely. So much to unpack then. I'm sure investors are, waiting and watching to see how they'll play 2025 with the Trump presidency. But thank you so much, Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO, Finance with Mukhtar. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Ladi, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All righty then. So at 1 p.m. we'll give you more updates on how the markets are reacting to inauguration day today. We already saw some dramatic moves with some asset classes. We'll give you all that information at 1 p.m. Thank you for watching. That's it from me on Business Morning. I hand things over to the Sunrise Daily team.
Well, what we're discussing next is very closely related to business and still the aftermath of Detty December. Sadly, not all of it was very positive. While, it has been largely praised as something we should look forward to and, try and plan ahead for. I think it was the former governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, SAN, who had spoken recently at a convocation event in Lagos, where he said that Nigeria was said to have gotten about 4% of its GDP in December alone in activities, commercial and economic activities around December. Just in case you're wondering, some people have put that at about $8 billion. I think that, it's still left for the MBS or whoever else to certify those numbers to us. But if we're looking at such substantial numbers, what are the drawbacks, if any? There's some people that have started reporting that, some people went back to their base abroad and then they started asking their banks not to honor some commitments and financial payments which they had made, and saying that they had no knowledge of those payments as such. How can we, mitigate this sort of drawbacks? We don't know how widespread they are. We're unable to measure for now, just what, how widespread that sort of practice is. But if it is widespread, or even if it was just a small fraction, this certainly will impact the businesses that are affected, especially if businesses were conducted with them. And Nigeria, being known, we're still fighting that image in the media as not being the headquarters of online-based scams. It is very likely that we will be holding the short end of the stick. But what can we do to mitigate some of these, drawbacks that could come as a result of Detty December and its associated spendings? Joining us right now to discuss this is Mr. Richard Ejiofor, who is the CEO of Mr. Rule Group in the United Kingdom, is a HR specialist and also a former bank card business manager. He's currently a student in the United Kingdom. Mr. Ejiofor, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, Mupe, and the rest of the team there. Just a quick correction. I'm not a student at the moment. I'm a UK student recruitment consultant.
Oh, apologies. I did not read it in full. Apologies for that. But, we're all learning, aren't we? Let me quickly ask you, this Detty December, what was your reading of it? Because we've gone on about it. We even understand it's finally made its way into Wikipedia. People are now, it's now getting into mainstream. Before you know what's happening, it might even be in the dictionary. You never can tell. So what was your reading of this term now that seems to have come to stay?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me into this to discuss this. The Detty December itself is something that ordinarily I thought should be associated with celebration because December is for Christmas celebration. But the current happening is becoming disturbing because I read the statistics from the Lagos State consultant, the statistics from the tax and the revenue, the transactions that happen in Lagos. And I begin to read the trending news about the Detty December, which appear to now, the name Detty December now seems to be correlated with a fraud and not the original celebration which December was supposed to be for.
Well, that's certainly very, very disturbing. I mean, what we're now beginning to hear about how, some people are getting back home and saying, and denying some transactions that they, consummated here in Nigeria, and businesses now holding the short end of the stick as a result of that. Some businesses even saying, oh, they're about to go under as a result of this. Is there anything that could have been done, any safeguards that Nigerian businesses need to put in place? Because we understand that part of the challenges for those who came home, I remember reading a Nairametrics, let's say, article on the drawbacks, the advantages and what we need to do, but then the drawbacks were around transactions, how cards that were brought home from abroad were not compatible with the systems that we had here, and how some of them had to, withdraw dollars somewhere, change in another place. And the transactions were not really, really easy peasy, so to speak, unless they were able to get Nigerian cards. So do you think that at the end that could be an advantage rather than a disadvantage?
Well, definitely, when you look at it for the standpoint of tourism, that is definitely a disadvantage for Nigeria because most country today, they strive on the revenue they generate from tourism. And if that is happening, then it is not really an advantage for Nigeria because it paints a bad image of a carded transaction, especially for foreign card coming to the country to do transactions. But let me quickly take you through, because I understand what is going on, and I want to quickly take us through the term chargeback, because that is where it eventually ends. When a card holder goes to a card issuing a financial institution to say a transaction which has appeared on my account, I do not recognize this transaction. This transaction was not initiated or consummated by me. That is a chargeback in itself. But let me quickly take us through the process of chargeback, and then we look at who eventually pays the chargeback and some mitigation that can be put in place to avert this occurrence. Because sincerely, I sympathize with businesses, especially small businesses in Nigeria that may have been affected with this by this Detty December. For chargeback to be processed, the card holder has to go to the issuing bank, to dispute a transaction. When they dispute that transaction, they have to support it with evidence, maybe like a receipt or email to say they have not done this transaction. Then the issuing bank, which is that card holder's bank, will have to review the transaction. When they review the transaction, then they will I don't know if the Nigeria bank have this provision, but a country like the UK has that provision where they have to make a provisional credit for you while the investigation is going on. They made that provisional credit just in form of to cushion the pain, the financial pain that will be going through at that particular time. When that provisional credit has been made available to the card holder, then the issuing bank will now communicate with the merchant bank The merchant bank in this instance now, Nigeria, is a bank in Nigeria where that particular client, that merchant, that particular, for instance, a hotel where the card was used, the bank of that hotel is the merchant bank. They will contact the merchant bank, and when they contact the merchant bank in itself will now contact the merchant. The onus is now on the merchant to prove that this transaction happened. It is more difficult when the transaction is what we call in a card processing, not card present transaction, like the online transaction. But when it is a card present transaction, then it may be difficult for someone who want to fraudulently do a transaction at a particular point of payment, and it goes back to claim a chargeback. That will be difficult. And if the merchant is able to prove, and say this transaction was consummated, because the owners at the end of it all for the chargeback is for the merchant to be able to prove that this transaction was consummated by the card holder. And if he's able to prove that, it goes back to the issuing bank, that's the card issuing a company of the person who used the card and is now claiming for a chargeback. If the issuing bank is satisfied, if he's satisfied with the evidence that has been presented by the merchant, then the provisional credit which they have made for the card holder, they have to reverse it. But when the merchant is not able to prove that this person was present and did the transaction, that is when the problem lies. The merchant has to bear the pain, because in the first place, if it is goods or services, you have already they already parted with your good, you have rendered the service, and now the fund which you were paid from the issuing bank of the card that was used on your platform is now being reversed back to the issuing bank. So the person who is the merchant now is the one who this onus is on to prove that this transaction happened. And so I want to say that for Nigeria, especially for the merchant, because I feel I sincerely sympathize with them, for those of them who are losing money or losing their business because of this. We are in a modern world where technology can help us to solve some of these things. I know that there are some of these businesses that are small businesses, and when I mention technology, they may feel that we are not able to install technology. It will not be too expensive for you, no matter how small your business is, to install a camera at the point of payment of your business, because those are some of the evidences that you can present if a chargeback comes to you to say this customer did this transaction. And I'm also, the way it is going now, I also have the feeling that there may be some persons who have capitalized on the let me say, that technology not being available in Nigeria in some business places to be able to track that they actually consummated this transaction. Some person may be capitalizing on that now, and they are using it to do transaction which was a genuine transaction, and when they get back to their country, they began to ask for chargeback. Again, I also ask that the Nigeria bank should please stand up for their customer. I want to give you an instance. When I was in Nigeria, then I was somewhere in Asukro with the bank I was working with, and a very elderly woman called me and said he has been contacted that he won a federal government grant in millions, but that the persons who contacted her have asked her to pay that she has to pay the tax. She has to pay tax to federal government upfront before the money will be released to her. She contacted me, and when she contacted me, immediately I know this was fraud, and I have to play along with the people who contacted her, and they gave me the account number, they gave me the name of their account, and this was an account in a bank in Nigeria, and I contacted that bank, and I tell you, the bank did nothing. And that is why I'm saying that the Nigeria bank should also stand up for their customer. Because if the fund that would be lost, will be directly attributed to the income of that bank. The bank will stand up for it. But of course, what is happening now, what I see happening is that because some of these customers do not know their right, they do not have information on how to channel or pursue this, the banks are aware that they don't know. And when those chargebacks come, they push it directly to those merchants, the business owners. And again, because they know that most of them do not have like evidence to show or to prove, to justify that this transaction actually happened here. And so, like the case I mentioned about the bank, the elderly woman, you can see that I would have expected that when I contacted the bank, even though the bank was going to do something behind it, will give me assurance that they were going to do something. But the bank clearly told me that they can't do anything. And imagine if that transaction was successful, they will continue to do it to other people. When such a call comes to the bank, I expect the bank to take their customer serious and also see how to protect their customer. Because it is only when the loss will be directly impact the bank's income, that is when you see banks stand up to fight for customer. But when they can push it to the customer, they just leave it to the customer.
Well, it's a really sad situation. Two things. I mean, that was not the ending I was expecting to the story you were telling about your customer and how you tried to stand up for her. I was hoping that the ending would have been different, especially with the response from the other bank. But sadly, that was not the situation. And, you know, it does appear that Nigerian businesses are operating from an already disadvantaged end. You know, this reputation we seem to have with fraud cases, it subsided one time, but it does appear that it is back again, especially with the onslaught now we have with on Yahoo boys. So I'm wondering, you know, how do you think that, do you see a role for government here? Because if this is the situation where small businesses, it was just the other day, the former governor of Lagos and minister was talking about how, you know, every Nigerian would have to get on board if the next December is going to be successful. People would need to maybe get ready to vacate their homes and go to the village, etc., so we can make an extra income. Now, if that is the situation where small businesses are just running a little Airbnb here and there, you know, get involved in this sort of thing, what can they put in place apart from technology? And some people will argue that, oh, if you put cameras in your homes, that could be invasive. Some people could argue that that's an invasion of privacy. So, looking at that, what else can be done? Do you see a role here for government?
Of course. There's a role for government because sometimes when we are having a public discussion like this about the things that are happening in our country, I often hear people say, for instance, let me just give you an instance. I was watching a video of a campaign recently somewhere in the north, and this campaign trail was passing through like that, a lot of kind of a market, and everywhere was littered with a dead. And somebody challenged the politician who were campaigning to say, look at the road where you are campaigning, look at how the road look. And a lot of people who are making comments were saying, is it the politician who did not keep the road tidy? And my comment to them was that, yes, it is not the politician who did not keep the road tidy. It most definitely it will be the traders around that place that make that road untidy. But if the government itself, that is why we have a government that puts things in place. If the government itself sees it and they do nothing to enforce tidiness, those things continue to happen. So in this case of Detty December, government have a role. I can tell you, for instance, in the UK, sometime in September, I think September 2023, the financial card processing regulator came up with a regulation, because it was also happening in the UK. I can confirm to you, I've had a experience where I was to buy something on the Facebook market, and because this transaction was happening on a Tuesday, and I told the person I would not be able to come and see what I was buying until on Saturday, and the person said I need to make a deposit. I need to make a deposit so that what I wanted to buy, they can keep it until the Saturday when I'll be able to come and check it. And shortly after I made that deposit, the person blocked me. And then it was done on me that it was fraud. And immediately, because you gave me account number to creditor, and the bank told me regulatory body for card payment is really the regulation the responsibility is on the bank. The responsibility is on the financial payment, the card issuing a company to bear, and not for the customer, not for the card holder. So in this instance, the regulatory body in Nigeria need to stand up. They need to stand up and put regulation in place such that people are protected. Because if you look at it, the story is not good for us. Because if you look at what is happening, the reason why some of these chargebacks are successful, it is the image about the country which is already painted abroad. You mentioned the issue of Yahoo and the rest of them. And so when these chargebacks are coming and the person says, I didn't do the transaction, the issuing bank are quick to believe their story. Yes, there may be some genuine transaction of people coming back to say, I didn't do this transaction. But if it is a card present transaction, it is difficult for you to claim and say that you did not do this transaction. If they are online transactions, those may be difficult. It may be difficult for you to claim the merchant. May be difficult for the merchant to prove that yes, this person was present. But where it is a card present transaction, it is difficult for the card holder. I was not.
Mr. Joshua, there's an angle to this that you and Malkwe have spoken about, but I'd like to harp on it a little more strongly. And that's the fact that most of the transactions we're talking about were initiated by Nigerians. A good number of the people are Nigerians. And going back to their bases to make declarations about this chargeback, what do you make of that, particularly in the light of what you just said now about Nigeria's image? This is something by Nigerians, done in Nigeria, and then they go back. We've seen, as Malkwe highlighted, people crying, small business crying on social media, saying, look, this is unfair. It could crash their businesses. So these chargebacks are initiated by Nigerians for transactions they made in Nigeria. So what do you make of that?
Okay, again, I would say that, like I said earlier, that some of these transactions chargeback are genuine. But of course, from the stories I have read, a complaint I've heard from people, especially from the business people who are claiming that this transaction was done and these persons are coming back, then I strongly believe that there are some, maybe like a gang, fraud staff who are doing this, who are capitalizing on the vulnerability of this, especially the businesses in Nigeria who do not have either the knowledge on how to pursue this. Because let me tell you something, that in chargeback, where you are not satisfied, there's an arbitration where you can still go to the card.
Mr. Jafar, what I'm actually looking at is the image that you spoke to earlier. Something being done by Nigerians for things they did in Nigeria and return to their base to make those claims in foreign banks. How does that rub off on the entire conversation going forward, for Nigeria in particular as a nation?
Yes, of course. If you look at it, just like you said, most of these card transactions, let's assume the transactions done by Nigeria. There are some Nigerians who may have a fraudulent intent when they do the transaction, because they are capitalizing on the vulnerability of the business people in Nigeria, that when they go back, and because of the image that has been painted about the country, that when they go back and make this claim, that they will get back their money. And if they make it the first time and they get back their money, then they will continue to do that.
Okay, so where do we go from here, particularly as Nigerians, living in different parts of the world? I'm sure some of them are watching this program right now. Some of them will hear of these things, and they'll get into corners and they'll be talking, I did this to them, I did that to them, just to show whatever. So do you see a situation where the Nigerians here will have a better case Do you see these reversals being reversed when eventually, maybe there is no investigation at all on the part of the Nigerians?
Again, that is something I cannot confirm here because, like I said when I was speaking to Mokwe, most of the time the Nigeria bank don't stand up for their customer because if the impact is not going to be on the bank income, then they push these things to the merchant. It's not left for the merchant to understand how to pursue it to get their money back. There are investigations, and if the banks actually stands up for the business owners, and especially if the business owner is able to present evidence and say this transaction are genuine, this person was present here and the person that did the transaction here, then that the bank can actually help them because let me tell you something. The transaction, the settlement system, the cash settlement system, the merchant is not involved in it. The merchant does not know what is going on. All the merchant sees is a credit or debit in this account. But the bank, the financial institution is involved in it. And to answer the question which you asked earlier, is there anything government can do? Yes, the financial institution, the regulatory body should be able to do something to protect this merchant. I don't know. I left the banking system 8 years ago. I don't know if the card system in Nigeria has a limit for such a transaction. Here in the UK, card transaction has a limit, daily limit, so that when you are exceeding those limits, the bank is alerted and the bank will contact you to ask if you are the one initiating this transaction. And so also, when you are also doing a transaction, right there, if you are doing a transaction in a Nigeria and the bank is alerted, if the bank is alerted, they will get, sometimes they block the card and find out from you if you are the one doing this transaction. So I don't know if the Nigeria regulatory system, the financial system, the bank, if there are such a regulation in place to also help their own customer, because the merchants who are the business people here are their own customer, and if the business they are doing, card payment becomes an issue, because world over today, large transaction pass through card payment, because we are talking about a cashless society. So if a card transaction are passing through, if large transactions are passing through card payment, then the bank should also have in place things to help the small businesses, especially the small businesses, because some large businesses in Nigeria may have the capacity to be able to present or even pursue their cases. Because sometimes even the small bank, even the small business owners, even when they have evidences, the cost of pursuing the chargeback may even outweigh what they are pursuing, and they just ignore it. And these people keep doing these transactions.
Well, I sincerely hope that, for those small businesses that are watching this conversation, they start to, or potential businesses, they start to put safeguards in place for things like this. And we also hope that the disputes are resolved amicably. That this is something that the regulator of our banking system here would also look at and see how small businesses in particular can be protected. But thank you so much for speaking with us this morning, Mr. Richard Ejiofor. He is the CEO of Mr. Roll Group United Kingdom Limited. He's an HR specialist and also a former bank card business manager who is currently a UK student recruitment consultant. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Indeed, we have a few feedback for you. We see this first one from Bashir Bala talking about the explosion that occurred in Niger State. He says, our people are risking their lives in search of what would not survive them for even a day or two. Petrol tankers should be avoided whenever they have an accident.
Well, Festus Akinboyewa was interested in the same story. He says, sad that fuel tanker explosions are becoming common in our country. Seeing people burning to death when petrol tankers overturn and explode is extremely painful. The searching question is, what kind of poverty will make people gather around an overturned petrol tanker to steal fuel only to die in a fireball? May God rest the soul of those who died and comfort their families. But there is a lot to learn from this ugly incident. It's a sad that families have suffered tragic loss of their loved ones and properties to frequent fuel tanker fires. Fuel tanker owners must only give their fuel tankers to drivers who have the professionalism to drive such vehicles. Also, tanker owners should be held accountable for these tragic accidents.
Well, indeed, I have so much to reel over that particular incident. It's something I certainly will keep tabs on. Thank you so much to our viewers for watching this morning and sending in feedback. I'm Yusuf, wishing you a very productive day.
Absolutely, and a very productive